Rover SD1 is both the codename and eventual production name given to a series of executive cars built by British Leyland, under the Rover marque. It was produced through its specialist, Rover Triumph and Austin Rover divisions from 1976 until 1986, when it was replaced by the Rover 800. The SD1 was marketed under various names including Rover 3500, Rover 2300 and Rover Vitesse. In 1977 it won the European Car of the Year title. In SD1, the SD refers to Specialist Division, and 1 is the first car to come from the in-house design team. The range is sometimes wrongly referred to as SDI. The SD1 can be considered as the last true Rover, being the final Rover-badged vehicle to be produced at Solihull, as well as being the last to be designed largely by ex-Rover company engineers and also the final Rover car to be fitted with the Rover V8 engine. Future Rovers would be built at the former British Motor Corporation factories at Longbridge and Cowley, and were to rely largely on Honda engineering. History Background In 1971, Rover, at that time a part of the British Leyland Group, began developing a new car to replace both the Rover P6 and the Triumph 2000/2500. The designers of both Triumph and Rover submitted plans for the new car, of which the latter was chosen. David Back was to head the design team, inspired by exotic machinery such as the Ferrari Daytona and the late 1960s design study by Pininfarina for the BMC 1800, which also guided the design of the Citroën NCX. Spen King was responsible for the engineering. The two had previously collaborated on the Range Rover. The project was first codenamed RT1 but then soon changed to SD1 as Rover and Triumph were put in the new specialist division of British Leyland. Design The new car was designed with simplicity of manufacture in mind in contrast to the P6, the design of which was rather complicated in areas such as the de Dion type rear suspension. The SD1 used a well-known live rear axle instead. This different approach was chosen because surveys showed that although the automotive press was impressed by sophisticated and revolutionary designs, the general buying public was not, unless the results were good. However, with the live rear axle came another retrograde step. The car was fitted with drum brakes at the rear. Rover's plans to use its then fairly new 2.2L four-cylinder engine were soon abandoned as BL management ruled that substantially redesigned versions of Triumph's six-cylinder engine were to power the car instead. The Rover V8 engine was fitted in the engine bay. The 3-speed automatic gearbox was the Borg-Warner 65 model. The dashboard of the SD1 features an event, unusually, directly facing the passenger. The display binnacle sits on top of the dashboard in front of the driver to aid production in left-hand drive markets. The air vent doubles as a passage for the steering wheel column, and the podular display binnacle can be easily fitted on top of the dashboard on either the left or right-hand side of the car. An estate body had been envisaged, but it did not get beyond the prototype stage. Two similarly specified estates have survived, and are exhibited at the Heritage Motor Centre and the Haynes International Motor Museum respectively. One was used by BL chairman Sir Michael Edwards as personal transport in the late 1970s. The two cars as befit prototypes differ in the detail of and around the tailgate. One car has a recessed tailgate, while the other has a clamshell arrangement, where the whole tailgate is visible when closed. The SD1 was intended to be produced in a state-of-the-art extension to Rover's historic Solihull factory alongside the TR7. It was largely funded by the British government, who had bailed BL out from bankruptcy in 1975. Unfortunately, this did nothing to improve the patchy build quality that then plagued all of British Leyland. That, along with quick-wearing interior materials and poor detailing, ensured that initial enthusiasm soon turned to disappointment. Initial model and first additions to range. This car was launched on its home market in June 1976 in liftback form only, as the V8 engined Rover 3500, SOHC 2.3L and 2.6L6s followed a year later. The car was warmly received by the press and even received the European Car of the Year award for 1977. Its launch on the European mainland coincided with its appearance at the Geneva Motor Show in March 1977, some 3 months after the Car of the Year announcement. Dealers had no left-hand drive cars for sale, however, since production had been blocked by a toolmakers' strike affecting several British Leyland plants and a body shell dispute at the company's Castle Bromwich plant. Closer to home, the car and its design team received the Midlander of the Year award for 1976, because they had between them done most in the year to increase the prestige of the Midlands region. Poor construction quality was apparent even in the company's press department fleet. The British magazine Motor published a road test of an automatic 3500 in January 1977, and while keen to highlight the Rover's general excellence, they also reported that the test car suffered from poor door seals, with daylight visible from inside past the rear door window frame's edge on the left side of the car, and a curious steering vibration at speed which might have resulted from the car's front wheels not having been correctly balanced. Disappointment was recorded that the ventilation outlet directly in front of the driver appeared to be blocked, delivering barely a breeze even when fully open. The writer had encountered this problem on one other Rover 3500, although he had also driven other cars of the same type with an abundant output of fresh air through the vent in question. Nevertheless, in March 1977, Britain's Autocar was able to publish an article by Raymond Mays, a famous racing driver and team manager during the 1930s, 1950s and 1960s, in which Mays explained why, after driving it for 12,000 miles, he considered his Rover 3500 was the best car he had ever had, both for its many qualities as a driver's car and for its excellent fuel economy even when driven hard. Similar ventilation problems persisted until 1980 and were reported in tests of the V8's version. In television shows John Steed in The New Avengers and George Cowley in The Professionals both used yellow Rover 3500 models. Although using different registration numbers, both were possibly the same car. Cosmetic tweaks and range expansion. Between 1976 and 1981 there were some very minor updates to the car, including new badging and chrome back door mirrors. Mid-1979 saw the introduction of the then range-topping V8's model with no mechanical alterations, available in a rather bright metallic Triton green amongst others with either gold or silver painted alloy wheels depending on the body color. Interior specification included air conditioning, thick luxurious carpets, velour seats and a headlamp wash wipe system. This now very rare model was replaced in late 1980 with the Vanden Plas model, which came with a leather interior as standard. United States. In 1980 Rover obtained U.S. type approval for the SD1 and re-entered the American market after a 10-year absence. The car was only made available as a single variant, using a modified version of the V8 engine and badged simply as Rover 3500. The equipment and trim levels were similar to that of the UK market's then top-of-the-range V8's model. The main differences were a smaller steering wheel, the sunroof being a cost option, and rear passenger head restraints were not available at all. Small Union Jack decals were fixed to the lower section of each front wing, just ahead of the doors, to promote the car's British origins. The 5-speed manual gearbox was supplied as standard, with the 3-speed automatic version being a cost option. U.S. safety legislation demanded that the headlamp arrangement excluded the front glass panels. Also larger, heavier bumpers were required, increasing the overall length to 191 inches. American emissions regulations necessitated other differences, including replacement of the carburetors with Lucas L Jetronic fuel injection system and the fitting of dual catalytic converters, a modified exhaust manifold and desmogging equipment. The engine's compression ratio was modified to 8.131. Publicity material claimed it was capable of reaching 148 horsepower at 5100 RPMs, but the car as sold actually peaked at 133 horsepower. A desmogged carburetted engine had already been on sale in Australia since August 1978, with 102 kilowatts. Australia received a version of the fuel-injected federalized engine with 106 kilowatts beginning with the 1981 model year. Despite the necessary modifications, Rover chose not to set up an assembly plant in the U.S. but built and shipped the cars from the Solihull factory. The SD1 gained positive reviews in the American press and was competitively priced against rivals such as the BMW 5 Series and corresponding Mercedes-Benzes. Nevertheless, the car achieved just 480 sales between its launch in June 1980 and the end of that year. The whole of 1981 attracted 774 sales, although most of these cars had actually been built and stockpiled the previous year. Rover ceased the supply of American market SD1s at the end of 1981, although unsold cars remained available from dealers well into the following year. Reasons for the commercial failure of the SD1 in the US are open to speculation. The weak value of the American dollar against European currencies at the time rendered imports relatively expensive in comparison to home-built product. A significant rise in oil prices during 1979 led to many motorists opting for more fuel-efficient cars. Public awareness of the SD1 may have been low as the dealership network across America was small, while Rover's expenditure on the aforementioned modifications, testing and approval for the U.S. market left limited budget for publicity and advertising. Production shift Major restructuring of BL following the Ryder report resulted in the SD1 production line being moved to the former Morris plant in Cowley in 1981. The Solihull plant was turned over to produce Land Rover models, following on from that marque's separation from Rover in 1978. The hugely expensive extension to Solihull, which had been built specifically for the SD1 and Triumph Trail 7, was closed. 1981 also saw the beginning of Project 20, a venture between BL and Honda for a new executive car expected to replace the SD1, although it was not anticipated for production until the mid-1980s. Major midlife facelift Early in 1982, Rover unveiled the Cowley-built, facelifted line to the public. These cars benefited mostly from small cosmetic changes on the exterior as well as a quite extensively redesigned interior. Car spotters can distinguish the two series by the headlights, which were chrome-rimmed and flush-fitting on the later, recessed on the earlier series, the deeper rear window now fitted with a rear wash wipe, and the new plastic wraparound bumpers which replaced the three-piece rubber and stainless steel ones. Other details, which are not as easy to assign, include the full-width rear badge strip under the tail lights, engine-size badges on front wings, and a range of new wheel trims and alloy wheels. The automatic gearbox was now a Gram 180 model, still offering 3 speeds but better ratios. The electric window switch pack moved from the center console to the driver's door, and a fully automatic choke appeared, eliminating the manual choke lever which had a tendency to break. Further range expansion 1982 was also the year when SD1 buyers could finally opt for a 4-cylinder engine, since the 2-liter BLO series engine of the Morris was offered. The engine was particularly aimed at company car fleets where its size enabled it to beat a taxation threshold. This broadened the SD1 range and made it more affordable to potential buyers, giving British Leyland an all-round rival to the Ford Granada, which had always featured a 4-cylinder version, although unlike the SD1 or earlier P6 had never been available with a V8 engine. Another 4-cylinder engine became available in the 90 bhp 2400 SD Turbo. This was the only diesel-engined SD1, utilizing the HR492 motor from Italian VM Motori, also used in the Range Rover Turbo D model, chosen for its petrol-like smoothness. BL had intended for a diesel version of the Rover V8 engine to be used in the SD1, but the problematic development program was cancelled in 1983 in favor of engines bought in from outside manufacturers. The flagship model was created when Rover introduced a 190 bhp fuel-injected version of its V8. Borrowing from technologies pioneered in the US and Australian markets, the new derivative was originally only available in the Vitesse model, but from 1984 onwards it was also offered in the luxury Vanden Plas range, badged as the Vanden Plas FE. To meet the demands of the luxury executive car market, where automatic transmission tended to be preferred, Rover first offered an auto as an option in the Vitesse, but later withdrew the option and lured the customers to the plush Vanden Plas FE instead, which had all the standard comforts of the Vitesse, such as electric mirrors, windows and locks, a trip computer, headlight washers, an adjustable steering column and a 4-speaker stereo. Additionally, it added as standard leather seats, an electrically operated sunroof and cruise control. The only option being air conditioning. Very rare are the twin plenum Vitesses. These had 2 throttle bodies mounted on the plenum chamber instead of one, and were produced in very small numbers as homologation for the twin plenum Razors. List of model names. The car was never marketed as the SD1. The models produced were usually named according to their engine size. Rover 2000, Rover 2300, Rover 2300S, Rover 2300 SE, Rover 2400 SD Turbo, Rover 2600, Rover 2600S, Rover 2600 SE, Rover 2600 Vanden Plas, Rover 3500, Rover 3500 SE, Rover 3500 Vanden Plas, Rover 3500 Vanden Plas FE, Rover V8S, Rover Vitesse. The initial May 1976 launch was for the 3500 only. A little over a year later the 2300 and 2600 were added. The V8S was a short-lived model introduced later, and dropped before the first mild facelift, after which the range was 2300, 2300S, 2600S, 3500 SE and 3500 Vanden Plas. The 2000 appeared at the time of the major facelift, with 2400 SD Turbo, 2600 SE, 2600 Vanden Plas, Vitesse and 3500 Vanden Plas FE appearing at various times afterwards. At the very end of the life of the car the range was briefly reduced to 2300, 2600 Vanden Plas, and Vitesse and deleted side graphics. Foreign production, the standard 2000, after its replacement by the Rover 800 series in the UK in 1986, the SD1 emerged very briefly in India as the standard 2000. From 1985 to 1988, it was assembled at the now-defunct Standard factory in Madras. However, the Indian version of the SD1, a Euro-powered by an elderly 2.0L engine with only 83 horsepower, and with raised suspension, a Euro, was a failure also due to its high price, and Standard ceased car manufacture soon after. The factory was secured after production ceased, and recently Rimmer Brothers acquired the entire stock of unused parts for resale in the UK. This has meant that a number of parts which had not been available for some time can now be bought new. Motorsport. Steve Soper and Rena Copyright Mitch won the 1983 RAC Tourist Trophy driving a Rover Vitesse. Andy Rouse won the 1984 British Saloon Car Championship driving a Rover Vitesse. Jeff Allam and Armin Hahn won the Group A class and finished 12th outright at the 1984 Bathurst 1000 in a Tom Walkinshaw Racing Rover Vitesse. Tom Walkinshaw and Win Percy won 6 rounds of the 1985 European Touring Car Championship driving a TWR Rover Vitesse. TWR Rovers won 3 rounds of the 1986 FIA Touring Car Championship. In touring car racing, the 3.5L Rover V8 engine produced approximately 340 bhp by 1986. British police use. The SD1 was popular with British police forces, particularly in V8 form. West Yorkshire Police were the first police force to use the SD1. When SD1 production was ceasing, police forces stockpiled a number of the cars for later use, to be introduced over the late 1980s. On 8 May 1987 a pair of Metropolitan Police SD1s made the now famous liver run, transporting a donor organ from the M11 to the Cromwell Hospital, West London, covering 27 miles in under 30 minutes. The run was part of a police camera action special broadcast in 1997, including the patient who successfully survived the transplant. References, citations. Bibliography. External links: The World of the Rover SD1, Rover SD1 Club, Rover SD1 Australia.